if something is a function. Again, it can only, your domain can only be related to one range. It cannot have more than one range. That's something very important to understand. So let's write that down. The domain, which again, those are your X values, right? Or your input. Your domain or your X values, your input cannot, and I'm going to put that as large as possible so that you understand and remember that, it cannot have more than one range, which again, your range are your Y values or your output. Okay? Each domain value is connected to exactly one range value. So graphically, what that looks like, here's an example of a graph that if I were to have the following, this is actually considered to be a function. Not a function. This is considered to not be a function. This is not a function because your X has more than one Y that's related to it. Not a function. If I have a set of points, because of the fact that I have a repeat in my domain, because the domain repeats, it is not a function. So graphically, this is what it looks like. And data-wise, whether it would be a table or a set of points given to you, that's what it looks like if it is not a function. Now, it's very important to understand, though, I just said that the domain cannot repeat. The domain cannot repeat. If the domain repeats, it's not a function. However, your range can repeat. It is perfectly okay for the range to repeat. So if I were to go ahead and graph a flat horizontal line, like the following, that's okay. This is a function. Because the domain doesn't repeat. As long as the domain does not repeat, you have a function. And now I've graphed straight lines. Functions don't always have to be straight. Functions can have curvature to it. What I've graphed here is a linear function, meaning it is a straight line, okay? But it does not always have to be linear. We will be getting into linear functions more in the next week, but it does not have to be a straight line in order for it to be a function, okay? So rule number 2, all functions must pass what's called the vertical line test. And what the vertical line test tells us is, and this is only for graphs, that's a very important thing to understand, that if you can only use the vertical line test if you're looking at graphs. So let's go ahead and write that down, that it's for graphs only. And what the vertical line test states is that if you draw a vertical line anywhere on your graph, it should only pass through one point at any given time, anywhere on the graph. Okay, so let's write that part down. A vertical line should only pass through the function at one point. So if I draw a vertical line, it should only be able to pass through one point on my function. So here's an example of passing the vertical line test versus not passing a vertical line test. So let's say that we have the following here, and my graph looks like this. If I draw a vertical line here, how many points did I pass through? And I'll do it in a highlighter so it shows up a little bit better. If I draw a vertical line here, how many points did I pass through on the graph? On the graph function. I only pass through it at one point. If I draw it here, I'm only passing through it at one point. If I draw it here, I'm passing through it only at one point. Here, passing through it at one point. No matter where I draw it, I'm only passing through it at one given point. So that means that this is a function. This is considered to be a function. Now, let me give you another representation. This is not considered to be a function because, yes, if I draw a vertical line right here, I'm only going to pass through it at one point. But the minute that I draw through it here, I'm going to pass through it at all of these little given points, aren't I? Same thing if I draw it right here. I'm going to pass through it at all these given points. So this is not a function, because it does not pass a vertical line test. The vertical line test should only cross over at exactly one point on a function. Okay, so what I want to do on the next page is I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a few examples, and I want you to tell me whether it is or is not a function. Is it a function or not a function? I'll give you a few more seconds to copy that down. Okay, so let's go ahead, and here are a few examples that I want you guys to try on your own. You're going to tell me if you believe it is or is not a function. And if it is not a function, I want you to tell me why. So you're going to identify if it is a function or if it is not a function. If it is not a function, you need to be able to indicate why it is not a function. Okay, let me zoom in for problem number 1. For problem number 1, who can tell me if this is a function or not a function? Daphne? Not a function, and why is it not a function? Because which one? The one that has domains of 2, right? The 2 in our domain spot is repeating. Therefore, that means it is not a function. This is not considered to be a function. What about for problem number 2? Function or not a function? Amy, why? Because the -1 repeats. Very good. See, if you notice, that -1 has a branch extending from it twice. It has 2 branches extending from it, which means that it is repeating. So that is not a function. What about for problem number 3? Is that a function or not, Bonnie? It is a function. Notice that, yes, the range is repeating, but each of the domains only has 1 branch. Each of those domains only has 1 branch. That makes this a function. What about for problem number 4? The graph. Is it a function or not a function? Bonnie, go ahead. Function. If we take a look at it, it passes the vertical line test. I'm only going to cross over 1 point on it at any given time. So it is considered to be a function. And what about for problem number 5? Function or not function? Not. Because right here, when I do a vertical line test, I'm going to pass through 2 points. And same thing here, if I do a vertical line test, I pass through 2 points. So this is not a function. Okay, if you go into Google Classroom, you've got 2 IXL skills that have been loaded on there for today. You can finish them very quickly. I think in just the 8 minutes that you have right now, you should be able to finish them. And in fact, if you get a SMART score of 70 on both of them, I've got candy for you to grab. Okay, so work hard.